All right, welcome to Mr. Holloway's Foundational Java Skills series. This is the second video in the series, and in this video I'm going to just do some cleanup. We're going to talk about comments. We're going to talk a little bit about how to do output in Java. But before we get started, go ahead and like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and class is now in session. All right, so as I stated in my previous video, we set everything up in a Replit. So this is Replit. It's a website that I'm using. I figured that this is probably the easiest way to write code, and I highly suggest that you code along with me. Pause when you need to, but it's highly advisable that you code along with me because we become better coders by actually coding. Now, just want to point out a few things. If you're not working in Replit, that's okay. You're using some other editor, that's fine. But I'm going to use this. I'm going to use Replit. So I want to point out that our environment may look a little different, and mine does. So I'm going to clean this up to where what our environment should look like. So no matter if you're working in Eclipse or some other code editor, this is how your in a few minutes, this is how your code should look. So, and if you're working in Replit, this is this is the default code. So when you actually create a Replit, this is the default code, and this was something new actually from that I haven't seen before. So let's clean this up. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of all this stuff in green. So if you're working again in Replit, you may actually have the same environment. I'm going to get rid of all of this stuff in green. And I'm also, let me come down here. Okay, so now you should just have something that says class main, and then you have public static void main, and then you have some stuff inside of here. Now, if you're at this point, that's good. Now, I'm going to go on a little further, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these brackets down. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move this. This is an opening bracket, and this is a closing bracket. This is an opening bracket, and this is a closing bracket. So I'm going to move this opening bracket down. I'm going to move this one down here. And I'm doing this for a very specific reason. Now, notice that they're not aligned. So I'm going to line these up because that's kind of the standard practice. So I'm just going to make sure everything lines up. And then I'm going to scoot this over too. So I'm just hitting the tab button. Okay. So that looks a lot better. Now, before I get into this explanation, in Java, you will have, in pretty much all programming languages besides Python, you don't have much of this in Python, but you're going to have a curly bracket. This is a opening and closing bracket. A square bracket. And again, this is opening and this is closing. And this is an opening and closing parentheses. So whenever you have any kind of bracket, whether it's a curly bracket here, and I can space this out here, a square bracket or parentheses, you have to have a closing bracket. Okay. Now it's not a big deal now, but once our code starts to become a little bit more complex, it's going to be important that we identify opening and closing brackets because it's going to make a big difference. So if I were just to do this, let me just show you this. So sometimes code will look like this. Right, and we have a bunch of these here. Okay, now I'm getting errors, and that's okay for now. But I have a bunch of these, and your code could look like this. We could run into a problem where if you were missing a closing bracket, you're not going to be able to find your way. So, or not be able to find, or it's going to be a lot harder to find the error in your code. And so I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, just right from the beginning about how I'm going to code. Because we're beginners, and I want you to be able to identify opening and closing brackets. Now, another thing I want to point out is that in this editor and many other editors, you can collapse things. So notice that this, when I click line 2, and if you are able to go ahead and click, I am collapsing this, and this is what's called a class. It's called main. And again, don't pay attention to this stuff now. I'm just going to kind of just do a general description, but we're going to talk about classes in many videos beyond this. So this is not important now, but I just want to show you the ability to collapse and unfold fold and unfold line. So I'm just going to unfold this and notice that this block of code is inside of this. Now I can also collapse this here. So I can collapse the main method and notice that everything is collapsed here. And now this line of code, line 5, is inside of the main method. And so these are pretty helpful, but it also can help you find opening and closing bracket. But this is really important. Now, again, I could have this up here, which many seasoned programmers do. They can have, you can have it anywhere. It really doesn't matter. But because this is a beginning foundational course, I'm moving these here because I want us to establish good habits. And then once you become a little bit more confident with what you're doing, you can go ahead and leave those brackets wherever you need to. But this is kind of the way we're gonna code. All right. Now, as stated before, I'm not going to provide any explanation about the class main and public static void main. All right. For the next few videos, we're only really going to work inside of the main method. So again, what we're doing is all of our code that we're going to write is going to be inside of here. And then at some point I will do kind of a breakdown of what a method is and what a class is. But at this point, we're going to just ignore this. The main thing is we just want to code inside of here, and we're only going to focus on this. Now, let's move on to line 5. And notice that I'm referring to it as line 5. Code and code editors, they have lines of code, and this is how we refer to specific lines, and this is line 5. Now, this, let's go ahead and run this, and let's see what happens. So I'm going to run it. It's System.out.println. The dot is called the dot operator, so we have System.out.println. And notice that we get hello world. So if you've written that program, congratulations, you are now a Java programmer, and you can hack NASA. All right, now, a couple things about Java. This allows us to produce output over here in the console. And this is a lifesaver. This is really helpful. In Python, you do print. You would do something like that. Let me see, JavaScript, it will be console.log, right? Something like that. And I believe C# is console.write. Write something, write log. I can't remember now, but they all have their forms of output code that will produce output. All right. This is a Java course, so we're going to stick with Java. Now, the other thing is that every time you write a line of code, you have to put a semicolon. So again, let's try to run this without a semicolon. All right. So notice what's going to happen here, and we're going to do this here. So we get an error, and it says expected. Errors most of the time are pretty helpful. Sometimes they're not, but this one tells us, hey, we expected a semicolon. So that's pretty easy. Now, another thing is, let's just go ahead and stick with some errors. Now, let's say I eliminate the closing bracket for the main method. All right, let's try to run that and see if that's going to run. And again, we get an error. So it's really important that we just always do opening and closing brackets. Now, let's keep going. So I'm going to copy this line of code, and I'm going to put this here. And now, instead of hello world, I'm going to put something inside of here. So I'm going to say Mr. Hollaway. Now, what we are doing here is we are creating a string. So this is called a string. This is a string. And notice that with the string, we have an opening double quotes and a closing double quotes. And so we have to have opening and closing quotes, or we're going to get an error. So if I run this now, I can print some output, which is going to say hello world and Mr. Hollaway. And so here it is. Now, what would happen if I forgot to put a closing quote? Well, let's see. So we're going to go ahead and run. We're going to get an error because it's not going to recognize this as a string. Okay, so we need to close, what we call close the string. Okay, now the other thing is I'm going to let's put this one here, and I'll just say hello. And we're going to spend more time on strings. Specifically, I'll probably have a few videos just on strings alone, but I'm going to just kind of briefly cover strings here. So I'm going to say hello there. All right, and then I'm going to, instead of saying print, I'm going to say print, println, I'm going to say print. All right, so we have system.out.println, and then we have system.out.print, and then system.out.println. So let's see what happens with when we use the print. So I run it, and we're going to get the output of hello world first, because that would represent line 5, right? And then we get Mr. Hollaway. It goes to another line, and then we get hello there. But notice that hello there is actually on the same line. So if you guess, print ln allows the cursor to, it basically tells the cursor to go to the next line. So if we want to put this on the next line, we have to do a print ln up here. Now I'm just showing you this for your information, because we're not going to use print. We're going to use print ln most of the time, actually probably all the time. And so now we have some code. Now we got an error. Good, this is great. So we have an error, and I'm going to try to figure this out. Okay, so it says error caught, cannot find print symbol. So here I see the error, and this is a pretty much an easy error to figure out. It's just a spelling error. I actually put I, so I'm going to put L, and that should fix it. But Python will let you know when it's not happy. And so now we're going to run this, and we should get a pretty good output here. So we should get 3 lines of code. We have line 5, 6, and 7, and boom, there it is. Now, the other thing we can do is we can write comments. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about here. And a comment is really helpful for just kind of maybe helping you organize your code, or maybe leaving comments for someone that you're coding with. You want to use them sparsely, but they're still helpful. And so I could say this is I'm going to say this is a single line comment. Okay, so a single line comment, and then when I run this again, watch what happens. So this is a code, and this is going to be ignored by Java. So Java's not going to do anything with this. And so comments are really good. The other thing that you could do is you can comment code out. So I could say, hey, instead of printing out maybe all 3 lines here, I'm going to comment this out. So I don't want to run this code, because maybe I'm doing some troubleshooting and I'm trying to figure out. So I'm going to go through and maybe comment a few lines out. So I'm going to comment this line out, and then notice that here, this is no longer active. This is a comment. Okay, and so now if you notice, we get lines 7 and 8, and then that's how that works. All right, now there may be times I'm going to go ahead and uncomment this, and then I'm going to just do, for a demonstration, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to make this a bunch of lines of code. All right, now in this case, let's say I wanted to just comment every line of code out. Right, it would be very efficient for me to just go ahead and just do every single line. That's not really what we want to do in this situation. In this situation, we don't want to use a single line comment. We want to use a multi-line comment. And so in this case, I'm going to do a /. Remember, this is a /. It's down in the lower right hand corner of your keyboard, and this is a /. Okay, we're not going to work with much with backslashes, but we're going to work with /. So we're going to do a /, but instead of doing a double one, we're going to actually do a star. So that's Control 8, and then at the bottom where I want to close everything, where I want everything closed out, I'm just going to do a star and then a /. And now we have this line of code, everything, this whole multi-line of code not running. So when I run, nothing's going to run, because although the code is there, it's inside of a multi-line comment. So this is a multi-line comment. Okay, so that is going to conclude this video. If you like the video, go ahead and like and subscribe, and please leave a comment if you have a question. And I will see you in the next video, and class is now dismissed.